Hi everyone, and welcome to On the Volley, where I go through the tactical side of the beautiful game and analyze some of the most interesting teams, players, and concepts in world football. Today I'll be talking about the differences between pressing and counter-pressing. Hope you enjoyed the video and let's get into it. Now, before we start to talk about how they're similar or different, there's a few things we need to make sure we know, and that is what the terms pressing and counter-pressing actually mean, and a concept called the four phases of play. Now let's start by going through what pressing and counter-pressing mean. Now pressing just means to put pressure on the opponent when they have the ball with the intention of winning it back. And this is usually done in the opponent's build-up phase, and it's done to disrupt the opponent's build-up. Okay? Now, but counter-pressing has a slightly different meaning to it, in the sense that it's not just done to win the ball back, but it's also done to avoid getting exposed in quick transitions. And I'll get into this in more detail later. Now, the second thing we need to know is the four phases of play concept. And if you're not familiar with it, it's essentially a cycle that every single football match you watch or have watched goes through. Now, as the name suggests, there are four phases that a match can generally be divided into, and these phases usually occur in the following order: offensive transition, offensive organization, defensive transition, and defensive organization. Okay? Now, from the start of the game, this is the order in which the cycle will occur. Alright? Now, at the start of a match, the team with the ball begins the game by transitioning to the attacking shape, and so they start the game in offensive transition. Now, the team without the ball, they transition to their defensive shape, and they start the game in defensive transition. Now, if both teams can successfully transition to their attacking and defensive shapes, the team in possession are now in offensive organization. In other words, they're in an organized structure that makes it easy for them to create chances and score goals, right? And the team without the ball are now in defensive organization. And that means they're also in an organized shape that makes it easy for them to prevent any chances being created or any goals being scored. Now, when the attacking team loses the ball, either in offensive transition and the process of transition into the offensive shape, or when they've already transitioned into their offensive shape in offensive organization, they immediately transition to their defensive shape. Okay, so once they've lost the ball, immediately they have to get ready to defend, which is why they start changing their structure to their defensive shape. Okay, and this is why they enter the defensive transition phase. Now, conversely, the defending team, regardless of which defensive phase they're in, begin changing or transitioning to their attacking shape once they've won the ball, and so they enter the offensive transition phase. Okay. Now, when the defending team has finished transitioning to their preferred structure in defense, they are now in defensive organization. And likewise, when the attacking team has completed their transition to their offensive structure, they enter offensive organization. And when a turnover occurs, in other words, when possession changes hands, the cycle repeats itself for both teams. Okay? Now, let's look at an example in an in-match situation. So, in this example here, we have got Team Blue and Team Orange. Okay? Now, if we look at Team Blue's structure, the way they're set up, we can tell from that Team Blue are in offensive organization. And I'll tell you why. If you look at where the ball is, and if you look at the players that are lined up, right? So that band of 5 across Team Orange's back line, okay? That just tells you, that is usually a telltale sign that Team Blue are in offensive organization. Okay, when you have a band of 5, right, a line of 5 across the final third, that is usually a sign that a team is in that phase where they're trying to create chances or break down the opposition's defense, right? So Team Blue are in a 2-3-5 shape, right? So temporary 2-3-5 shape. So you've got a back two there, 2 central defenders. You've got the midfield 3, okay, and now you've got the band of 5 across the final third. Okay, now Team Orange are in defensive organization. Okay, so they are in a 4-3-3, defensive 4-3-3 shape. Okay, so you see, and that back four there is quite narrow. Okay, the midfield of three is also a little bit narrow as well, trying to be as compact as they can, and you've got the front line of three there. Okay, now the ball is on the left wing, and team blue are trying to create chances. Okay, so they're trying to break down this defensive team orange's defensive structure. Okay, now let's say that team orange go out to close down the player on the box. So team blue's winger, right, has the ball on the right wing, on the left wing. Okay, and he is trying to create chances, right? So he's trying to find a teammate, or maybe dribble across the touch line, and team orange's the closest players to him, the closest opposition players to him, try to close him down. Okay, and let's say that they're successful. And what happens is that the two teams immediately go into the transition phase. Okay, now if you look at team orange, right, the team orange's players are rushing forward. Okay, and most of them, the most advanced players will act as passing options to the ball carrier in order to take advantage of the space that's left behind by team blue. Okay, so team orange effectively are trying to counterattack. Okay, and they have to, and this is why counterattacks have to be quick, because there's a lot of space to exploit, and team blue will want to cover that space as soon as possible. Okay, so team orange are in the offensive transition phase. Now if you look at their structure as well, they're also pushing up. The defenders are pushing up. The whole structure is the whole team is moving up as one. Okay, and at the same time they're spreading out, right? So they're trying to use as much of the pitch as possible to make it harder for team blue to defend. The more of the pitch team blue has to defend, the longer it's going to take to be able to reach a player, to be able to close down a player, the more distance they have to cover. Okay, now you can see that team blue are trying to get back as quickly as possible to cover the spaces they've left, right? And so team blue are trying to prevent a counterattack happening here, right? See, the two central defenders are trying to get back and cover that space, that central space, that's the most dangerous space for team orange's forwards to get into, right? You can see the fullbacks, number 13, see the winger trying to track back as well, number 7, track back and help out his fellow fullback, who is also making a recovery run, right? So you see that the whole team blue, are trying to get back as quickly as possible, try to get as many men back to prevent a chance of a counterattack. Okay, so team blue are in defensive transition, and let's say that team blue are successful, so they manage to get enough men back, and what happens is that they will settle into their defensive shape. Okay, right? So on team orange, conversely, because they fail to counterattack quick enough, right, they will just settle into their offensive shape. Okay, so they're not going to try and force it. They'll try to keep the ball and try to work the ball in maybe the more dangerous areas and to create chances. Okay, so team orange in offensive organization, team blue now in defensive organization. Let's say that in the process of trying to create chances, right? So if you look at that number 10 there, he is trying to attempt a pass to his striker, number 9, and then the defender, number 3, reads it and intercepts it. Okay, so possession is changed hands again. And what happens is another transition phase. So both teams go into transition phase once again. Now this time, team blue are now in offensive transition, while team orange are now in defensive transition. Okay, and you can see that team blue are trying to build up quickly from the back, right? So you can see that the number 2 has dropped it deeper, right? You can see that the number 4 is trying to pull out wide in order to prevent any, in order to make himself a good outlet for the ball. Okay, and you've got the number 5 there acting as a passing option in the half space. Okay, so in a team, the players in Team Blue are trying to structure themselves, trying to position themselves in such a way that it makes it easier to be able to pass the ball through the lines of pressure. Okay, and at the same time, the wingers, number 7 and number 10, are making runs to be able to pin that defense back. Okay, and so what this does is that this creates space for the midfielders to be able to receive the ball into. Okay, so you can see that this has an effect. You can see the effect this has on Team Orange's defense. All three defenders, right? All three defenders are trying to get back as quickly as possible. Okay, so the three players temporarily acting as temporarily forming the back three previously an offensive organization, try to get back as quickly as possible. You can see Team Orange's fullbacks are also trying to get back as quickly as possible. Okay, so Team Orange are in defensive transition. Okay, and we now find ourselves back where we started, right? Team Orange are now in offensive organization, and Team Blue are now in offensive organization, and Team Orange are now in defensive organization. And so this is how the cycle, the 4 phases of play cycle occurs, right? This is how teams transition from one phase to another in a game. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification icon so that you don't miss any of the upcoming content on the channel. I'll see you in the next one.